Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Thank you for joining us for another... Oh, geez, that kicked in really quickly, didn't it? Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. This week on the slab is Trumbo. I'm John Comerford, joined in the studio by Marissa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
Sarah Stretton.
I feel like this music is gonna make my voice intonation go all over the place.
Yes, she's gonna scat her review.
Exactly, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
But good to be here.
And Tamara Berg.
Hey, everybody.
All right, so Trumbo. First of all, I want to get into our overall impressions, and also, as you give them, let me know where you fell on the continuum of how much you knew about the Blacklist, or were aware of this, historical fact. So, Marissa?
I like to say this movie was very interesting for me because I went in with no expectations, and then I walked out just saying, wow. And never really realized that actually happened in Hollywood. When I hear the Blacklist, maybe showing my age, I think of the more positive screenwriting list of the Blacklist that we know in Hollywood today's society. I didn't know all this politics went down back in the 40s to 60s, and I actually find it very interesting that they open our eyes to this is the reality, the sad reality that the Hollywood industry is and what it's been through and what it could possibly go back to. It opened my eyes to this type of story, and I think they did a really great job.
Yes, before I saw Trumbo, I'd heard reviews about the performances and about people really were drawn to it. I actually didn't know that his story was part of a bigger scheme, a bigger blacklist. I'd really only heard that it was about him kind of being isolated out of the film industry. Right. So I didn't even associate the word blacklist with this period. I, like Marissa, thought of the blacklist of the scripts, which are put on a list every year as the best scripts that weren't being made, and then for the most part, at least 3 of them get made the next year. But I also didn't go into this movie expecting a movie about any blacklist. I really thought this was going to focus on one man and one man's fight against everyone else. I didn't realize how many people were affected by it. It was wonderful to hear about. I thought it was compelling, interesting. It was a historical biography that made me want to know more about someone, which to me is a high point. They didn't give me every single bit of his life or who he was. It made me want to keep going. And people were right. The performances were great.
Tamara?
I, of course, have known about the Blacklist because you and I are both involved in writing, so it's one of those things that's important to...
You kind of have to know.
You kind of have to know. It's part of your initiation into the world of screenwriting and script writing. And I know a lot of people in the world, and I actually know a woman whose father was a producer at MGM during the time of the Blacklist, and so it would every once in a while sort of things would leak out, and so I've known a lot about that from not a lot I've known some about that from the Times, but I thought the film was really great for the idea of bringing the subject matter out to people who may not know about it. Now, a few years back, Elia Kazan got an Oscar, and he was famously someone who did name names during the time, so it came up in public consciousness not too long ago. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that it's being brought back again. Agreed about performances. I have a little bit of criticism on the overall feel of the film, but generally speaking, I really, really liked it.
Okay. Now, before I give mine, I'm just curious. Did you, who hadn't heard about the Blacklist, had you heard about the Hollywood 10? Did you know that? Because that was a term.
Oh, yeah.
Never heard that either.
In all honesty, no.
Okay.
I haven't. So that's why I also enjoy this film, because it opened my eyes to so many different things that I didn't know about.
It's an
They
important
always
topic.
are using
Yeah.
that phrase, like the Big 10, the Big 7, like this, the powerful 6 studios.
The Chicago 7, the
like,
Hollywood 10.
Like, there's so many that, like, yes,
Yeah.
I've heard them because they come up
Okay.
in conversation.
But
Most
you-
of the time, I'm just like, whatever. We'll move on with the conversation.
I didn't think
see how it
math would be
plays
part
out.
of this discussion.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, numbers, no.
Well, I always love historical dramas. That's
Yes.
why I love Bridge of Spies, and I'm gonna enjoy those kinds of things. And I like that this movie for those reasons, because it does bring this up, and I'm a big history buff. I love the performances as well. I have my issues with the film, but overall I'm glad they made it. I'm glad I saw it. I would recommend it, especially for people who don't know, because the level of fear and fear mongering at the time, and you see it happening currently now with people not wanting refugees, and it's the same kind of fear, and they're ginning it up, and it's so, even though it happened started in 1947 in this iteration, it's still there, and it's still ripe for society to speak about and
Current
to
events.
debate. So I thought, well, there you go. Obviously, it's a different matter, but it's still the same kind of fear, the same kind of fear mongering. So I appreciate that. So let's get into the story of it. We obviously can talk all about the structure and the script, but what I wanted to talk to mostly is. So we have this, this great blend, and sometimes better, more successful, and not with using archival footage and then black and white to try to get that. Did any of that help, hinder, work for you? How did that play to you? And because especially those who hadn't known the story, could you even tell what was archival footage and what
Right.
wasn't?
Yes, I could tell that.
Okay. Well, I say that because I didn't like the blend. I thought they could have done a better
Really?
job of it. Meaning, because there were times when they were using the black and white, I'm going, well, why aren't you, working that a little bit in the post? Because it was too clean for me on some of it.
Right.
It didn't and I was like, gosh, it was driving me crazy because it was taking me out of the movie.
I could tell that was a noir when they were doing black and white at the beginning of the film. I think it was actually I didn't mind it because it allowed the audience to know that this was a real thing. There is archival footage out there, and it just played with how real the story was.
I agree. I didn't completely take me out because it was almost as if it was checkpoints of validating that these things really did happen,
Right.
and that certain people in powerful positions were on certain sides of this line, like when they brought up interviews of presidents or court cases. Like, it was just a constant reminder for me that these are all true, and they're
Right.
really trying to, it sent the tone that they were really trying to stick to what actually happened for us, man. Because we do see movies all the time where you get either the front announcement that it's based on
That true story.
mostly true events, or like some true events. There's a whole different way to phrase it depending on what you watch. Or it's at
Inspired
the
by.
end.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
you get the classic like images just at the end during the credits. So for me, I liked that they added some of the real footage because it was just like, we're trying to
I loved.
constantly tell.
Let me be more specific. I loved the archival footage. I thought that
Yeah.
was great. I'm glad they brought it in. Where it was driving me crazy is they did some black and white stuff, which they didn't age at all, and then it was clearly not archival, but they were kind of mixing it with archival, and it just stood out to me like crazy. It just drove me nuts. Like, just age it. It takes 10 seconds.
But if you, I guess. But I mean, there were times where, like, for example, they had Diane Lane
Sure.
playing Trumbo's wife in the courtroom in the black and white, transitioning to the moment
Yeah.
of color.
Sure, that part was
So
fine.
making that go from really grainy
Right.
to current would have
No.
been so difficult, and I think that's probably what.
Those plans were successful to me.
Okay.
Those ones we were going from
you
archival footage
talking
to
about-
black and white stuff that wasn't aged.
Are
I'm
you
going, why are
are
they doing
you
that?
talking about the scene, the on-set scene where they're kind of filming in the beginning and he's pointing the gun down?
No.
No.
No, this is
I don't know what scene he's
specifically archival footage
Okay.
right next to intercut with. Okay, I can't remember the character's name. It's not even a character name. The real life guy, the bald-headed guy that was first involved in HUAC, that was talking to cameras,
Oh, yeah,
and explaining it. Okay,
the
those are
guys
all in
of
black and
the-
white. and then they would intercut that with archival footage that was grainy, and I'm going, why are they doing that?
Well, to answer your question, since it took all this explanation
Yeah.
for you to tell me what you were talking about, no, it didn't affect me.
Right.
Clearly it didn't, but it was driving me nuts. But I may be the only one, so that's fine.
Speaking to the archival footage, I know we'll get to it eventually, but I do want to talk about casting, because casting, even for some of the smaller roles, I thought was pretty amazing. Kirk, the guy who played Kirk Douglas,
Yes.
that was incredible. And in fact, I thought he must be a Douglas descendant.
He's not, he's Australian.
You know, Reagan.
Yeah.
Wait,
Sure.
Reagan?
No, you're talking about John Wayne.
Sorry, John Wayne, rather.
Because we did see Reagan in the film, but it was Reagan. He was playing himself.
But I did mean John
He
Wayne.
did a great job.
Didn't he? He was amazing.
So
Okay.
he did an amazing job. But I thought the casting was really great for especially those roles of people we know.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So, what else about the story that, because I thought, here's the other thing that I thought was hysterical. Not hysterical, just interesting.
Struck you funny?
It struck me as funny. We have arguably a story that is arguably about one of the most revered or celebrated screenwriters of the day, and it's the screenplay is written by a first-time feature film screenwriter.
Yeah.
At least that's his first credit. I should
And
say.
with all due respect, I thought there were some points that were lacking on the script. It felt to me, so there were times where, you know, anybody involved in the Hollywood 10 they went to prison.
Yeah.
They had to leave their families. They lost their livelihoods. Plus the scorn from all of their neighbors.
Yeah.
And, you know, as much as they showed it, I didn't really feel it that much, because I felt some of the dramatic moments were really missing. And I think that's the writer's miss. Do you guys agree with that?
I completely agree with that, because, you know, doing the research after watching the film and listening to all the interviews, I learned more so that the family members of the people who actually went to prison were very supportive of their husbands and everyone who was affected. They truly believed, and I don't want to say okay, but they were accepting that their loved ones went to prison because they were so supportive.
Right.
They're like, no, they are standing up for what's right, despite their leaving us and leaving us in financial hardship, and then being in the society, being judged and mocked by people. I found that interesting, and I didn't even see that in the film. We saw a little bit of, you know, Diane Lane's character, Cleo, going through financial problems with the families, but I didn't really see the
impact,
how it affected everyone else's families either.
Right. And, you know, we do have to say that, yes, the pool incident happened, and that was pretty horrific, but I just felt a little separation. What do you have to say about that, John? Because I'm sure you have an opinion on that. I am.
Well, I think they had the elements in there. They went from this idyllic home in the hills with the lake, and obviously that got taken away from them. Exactly. They end up in the city in a house, nice house, but a neighbor not so nice with the pool incident. So they have the elements in there, but I agree there were parts missing for me, because other movies have done it better. I mean, there was the one with Robert De Niro, and I can't remember the name at the moment. I have it written down, but I'll look for it, where he plays a director who's blacklisted, and what happens to him in his life and everything, and you see the desperation and desolation of what happens, and you feel it more in a greater way. So for me, that was missing in this too, because those were those things that I think because I know more of the history of it, I'm going, what about this? What about you? There was so much that I knew that they didn't have either chance to or chose not to show, that it was missing for me in the story.
It's hard for me to say, because I think that I was very emotionally connected, and with Trumbo, with his character, I really was tell too. And I remember also thinking at one point how much that this movie made me dislike. What is her name with the hat?
Hedda Hopper.
Oh, Hedda Hopper.
I really,
Lord. Kudos to Helen Mirren.
Yes,
I know.
And I love Helen Mirren, and I was like, "You're making me hate Helen Mirren." I thought that was impossible. and I really, so I felt really engaged with that. So trying to pinpoint why the relationships weren't engaging is really hard for me to figure out.
Well,
because I was
think-
engaged with characters, and I had an emotional connection with a lot of the characters. Loved Trumbo, hated Hat Lady. Thought
Had a hat lady.
Had a Hat Lady. really felt for Cleo.
Yeah.
Had a strange relationship with his children, but we'll get into that later. But at the same time, while I was connected to them throughout this film,
Right.
which made me engage and made me really like it, I can't say that the relationships between them were fully there.
Yeah.
Because the people I had such strong feelings for never had a ton of confrontation or like full out
Yes.
battle.
That's what was missing from
That's what was that's where I missed it. So, when you're invested in a film and you have the characters you love, hate,
Right.
pity, you want to see then those characters interact. And so where I was most emotionally drawn to were two people that never really had a full out all claws bared or whatnot
Trumbo and Helen?
interaction. Yes.
Yeah.
We would only see them have
And it
these
was always
sly,
these coy
underhanded
things. Yeah, exactly.
disties and whatnot, which I'm sure is realistic.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure
they
was.
never bit each other's
Right.
heads off, but I never got to let out my emotion.
Exactly, and because he didn't see it with them, you needed that release to see it with somebody else. Because when he goes off on Elle, his daughter, when he, she wants their birthday, and he's like screaming at her because he's writing, "Don't bother me," and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That was, I said, great, nice conflict, good drama, and all that kind of stuff. But then I wanted, when they had the scene with the wife, I wanted Cleo to lay into him.
Right.
It's like, sure, you're saving your career, but you're losing the family. He goes, I'm saving the family. It should have been a nice,
Bigger release,
exactly.
bigger emotion.
But emotionally connected. So I'll give the
Yeah.
writer and the actors that. I was emotionally connected. They made them feel real. Their actions caused me to have visceral reactions, but I never fully got to let go of all these emotions
I don't think
of
it-
where the characters were put.
For me, it was, let's say, I thought that it was written well enough that you got very layered characters, and I thought the performances were wonderful. I just don't think the writing crescendoed in any way where you were going, wow, that you got it at a visceral level, and I think that
agree.
just was missing for me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right. Okay, so we're done.
So now that's the movie.
I agree with that.
But on this little break, and now that we get to relax.
Oh, yes, that's
To
relax.
relax and settle in, we need to talk about a company that can help you do that. Casper mattresses. If you've watched Box Office Breakdown, you might have heard me talk about them before. They are wonderful, and they are connecting customers with quality mattresses that are also affordable. So a little bit about them. They create mattresses that combine premium latex with obviously memory foam, because everyone has to have memory foam in their mattress. But the reason they're able to do it for such a less price, I mean, you're talking about a twin mattress for like $500. You're talking about a king size mattress for $950 instead of comparable things at like $1,500.
Yeah, $2,000 is really common
Yes.
for a king size
You
mattress.
get one for $950, latex and memory foam, because they cut out the middleman. So Casper does this through online. So you go to www.casper.com, and we have a special offer to get you $50 off
that.
with the
Amazing.
promo
Nice.
BOX, BOX, from Box Office Breakdown, which is one of my shows. But they will get, and it's safe. There's a 100-day trial period. So instead of going to a store,
20 days probably, doesn't it?
no,
100
days.
100 day,
Oh,
100
Lord.
days.
100 day.
I just wanted you to say it again.
Of course. I can say it 50 times.
Okay.
100 day. So you're giving up going to the store trying a bed for 4 minutes that you're going to be stuck with spending $2,000.
Right.
You're going to get.
And you can't return them a lot of times when you buy them in stores.
No.
True.
And Casper is free delivery, easy returns, although I don't think you're going to be returning it, because you're going to get to spend 100 days.
Sorry, was that 100?
100 days testing out these mattresses. They're fantastic. Check them out. And for that special offer to get $50 off, just add the promo code BOX. Remember, go to www.casper.com.
Sleep restfully.
Sleep restfully.
Thanks,
and
man.
relax.
All right. What do you guys think about the idea that, let's say it this way. We have why is it that this was an independent film, first of all? Mm-hmm. Because I'm thinking you have all these amazing actors. I mean, they got a pretty decent cast in this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was an independent. Why? I'm just curious why a studio didn't get involved. Did you guys ever did anybody learn any research
Well, I
on
wonder
that?
if it has anything to do with the fact of the subject matter. I mean, is it still is he a hero, or is he a pot stirrer? and trying to do a story about that. I guess what I'm saying is it a controversial...
So it's not as clear-cut who's the good guy and who's the bad guy?
Maybe not. And he even said so himself, Trumbo did, in one of his speeches.
Yeah,
he said,
he's not a hero.
everybody's got blood on our hands.
Yeah, don't look for a hero or villain in this. We're all victims.
And there are shades of gray in everyone's behavior through this whole process, he had said. So I think probably it has to do with controversy. And, it's kind of a heady film, I would say. We're talking about alliances. Exactly. There aren't, there are dead fish in a pool or dead birds in a
you could
pool.
argue that this is... I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
You're chomping at the bit to say something.
Well, I just think that on top, I think everything you said is correct, but I think also a factor in this is that these studios aren't painted in the best light in this script, in this movie. Yeah. And I think today, the worst thing people say about studios tends to be that maybe they're a little corrupt, maybe they don't care as much about the authenticity or the art of the project. They're more interested in who they can sell this to, with the money they can make. I think this turned out to be a great film, but you put a studio involved, and I'm sure they want to make someone's, they want to put in that studios have changed, or that they want to take away that element and really focus on just the committee and not the fact that studio heads could be blackmailed, more or less.
Well, how about this argument? Because this is the kind of film that the studios love for Oscar stuff, because it's a serious subject.
Yes.
You got a great cast.
Yes.
It's a controversial subject, so it can create some buzz. I mean, there is that argument to be made, because let's face it, they do make those movies all the time just because they want the Oscar buzz.
Right.
So why wasn't this one made?
I'm trying.
What are the big studios producing this year for Oscar buzz?
Yeah, this is... well, I don't know.
Well, it's just the very beginning of the season right now, Oscar season. So, we haven't seen them all yet.
I think it's more so it's the context of what they're talking about and the content. And it's also, again, reflecting, it's not a positive story about our actual industry, talking about a very negative type of situation that happened in the world. And I think it's just, it might be, granted this happened decades ago, but it still affects how the studios work nowadays, what we came from, what we are now, how people view screenwriting, and just, it might get into, politics is always a controversial subject to anyone who doesn't want to talk about it. And then it's also that it still affects a lot of people. There are people still around that they remember this. It might be a little bit too close to the current times too. So had this movie been made maybe another 50 years, I don't think it'd be as big as a problem, but there are still people who've been affected by this.
Or possibly it was just a straight financial decision, because we can't make a lot of money off a movie like this. And maybe we might get some awards, but it's the money that we're talking about. And it's really just a financial thing, which was kind of demonstrated in the movie as well.
Exactly.
It's just a financial thing. Because let's face it, the budget they got was what I think my sources say it's safe to say 8 to 14, although I couldn't find a specific budget, which is rare. Usually,
I couldn't find anything either. I looked as well. I couldn't find anything.
And this film was only released in 45 theaters.
Yes, very limited release. And that was another thing. Did they release it just limitedly because that's all they could, or because they just let's get it out there because we do want to ramp up some support and get some people behind this, so we can be a runner and a contender for Oscars?
I don't know. When you've got somebody like Bryan Cranston and Helen Mirren on your cast, it seems to me like it's a little bit better of a bet than, what did you say, 45 theaters?
45 theaters.
Yeah.
That's like LA.
I know, but you assume that, but then also you have so many times you're having independent movies with A-listers like Helen Mirren and I think it was Ryan Reynolds, Woman in Gold. Gold. That also didn't have a wide release. Yeah. She starred in that. This is constantly done where you have stars like Joaquin Phoenix heading up independent movies, and then on the other hand, stars are failing when you're doing blockbuster releases. Look at Sandra Bullock, last month doing
Is it just a sign of the times because it's not a tentpole and it's not a superhero movie? And that's just the way things are these days.
Yeah, I think that this movie, I would not have been surprised.
Tamara's crying.
But looking at this movie, could you not see something like it being put out by Netflix now?
Yeah. Absolutely.
This
HBO,
is the
Netflix,
type of movie that an HBO Netflix premium provider would make because of the quality of the story and the quality of the talent involved. if you put this poster up and told me Netflix did it, I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally would believe it.
And the thing with Netflix, that's a platform for whoever's watching that wants to watch it. They have to make the effort to actually, hit play. And us, we went out to talk about it for this, but would we have seen this on our own accord?
I would have because of the
personally
subject. I would have
Of course.
completely, because I love this stuff, but I would have eaten it up.
And I would admit, I probably wouldn't. But that doesn't say that this film was bad or good in that way. I just
as far as its attractiveness
yeah,
level to you and appeal.
it's geared towards a certain genre or certain demographic for sure.
I just feel like there's a greater divide happening where studios are being drawn to, let's make Transformers 8000 and market to China. And if I want to see outstanding visual effects and be taken around the world, then yeah, I'm going to want probably a studio to take me there. But I don't need to see a studio movie to find quality. But I can find quality movies that now stream, that are now whatever. And if I'm going to get it for free because I'm already paying a monthly payment, then why am I going to not go just do that? Like... that's bad because I love going to the movies and I spend too many hours there a week.
Right.
But it does seem to be what's happening. And if people can find quality for less of a price, then why are they going to turn out to see a studio movie do it? It's going to cost them more.
One more on this idea, just because I'm still trying to wrap my head around. You've got Bryan Cranston, who's obviously won his Emmy, he's won his Tony, he did his LBJ. I mean, it's like everybody loves him.
Yes.
Everybody wants to see him and stuff. You've got John Goodman, you got Helen Mirren, you've got Alan Tudyk. You have so many people that people, that guy, they know them all. Louis C.K., right? So they have a huge cast. Everybody wanted to be part of it in some fashion. I mean, they obviously signed on, and just about every one of them did a fabulous job. I love John Goodman in this. It was amazing.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Well,
Even Elliot did a fabulous job in it.
so you're going to ask me why this isn't getting more attention?
Yes!
And I'm going to tell you because I think it's because a movie like Trumbo or Trumbo itself is relying on the word of mouth to get out within a week and then push for it to become big. Versus there's a couple of movies out there that have the same, or targeting, I'm going to reference like The Danish Girl.
Okay.
The Danish Girl isn't even really out yet and already has hype. And that's because 8 months ago, they started working on their social media and marketing campaign. I knew.
And it helped that he was the latest Oscar winner.
He was the latest Oscar winner. I found out but I also found out within like minutes that the movie got a standing ovation on its festival run.
Wow.
Like they pushed all of that. So for 8 months, I've known about the fact that The Danish Girl's coming out, that has had
huge buzz.
Oscars looking at it, and they've told me about it, and they've been doing press tours, and that's been on the media, so it's been on my mind. Versus Trumbo, I really didn't hear about it till the month it came out, and it's good, and now it's relying on the word of mouth for.
Well, that's another budgetary choice because there's a budget for those things for the promotion, obviously. So obviously there was a bigger budget for The Danish Girl than there was for this, probably in all ways. But so essentially, I mean, it comes back around to money, and the idea. It's an independent film that was distributed by
Bleecker Street.
Okay, so it's just supporting again the idea that more money brings you more.
Well, I mean, my argument is all those things play a factor, but I also think it's the quality of the movie. I think if the movie was just that much better for me in terms of the story that they given the script that they gave us, I think it would have been a much bigger hype. I think people are saying the performances are wonderful. You got to see them. A lot of people love Cranston as Trumbo. They say he's just created.
Well, you're gonna love Cranston as pretty much everything. Right
but they're
now.
also talking about.
I wouldn't buy him as the Danish Girl. I'm just saying.
They're talking about Helen Mirren's performance. They're talking about the Louis C.K. is a surprise to people. David James Elliott, which I mentioned, his run as John Wayne is surprising as well because he captures the spirit without falling into kind of
imitation.
Exactly.
Right, and it may also be that because in early, screenings and things, even the distribution company was like, it's not a 100% movie. It's maybe a 75% movie, and so that makes us have to scale back our expectations for theater releases, and also, let's choose to put some of that money in a different film. You never know.
So
I hate to be the
answer
cynic.
is money.
I really do hate to be the cynic on that, but it ends up being the answer to so many things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, John?
Yeah.
Which part? No, it saddens me to some degree. But before we get into anything else, how about the fact that we got Jay Roach as the director, who's more notably directing, Austin Powers, Meet the Fockers, that kind of thing. But he also did Game Change.
Very similar films.
He did Game Change and Recount, and so he's done
He
other
has a
things.
genre.
But I don't think this isn't really his first foray into a serious drama. And there's a lot of scenes in this that had a very light touch and comedic, and he was cutting a lot of the seriousness with some levity, shall we say?
John Goodman.
John Goodman, exactly. So
John Goodman, the bathtub, his writing in general for me, as much as it was like a driving force and the fingers were typing ferociously, I did feel like that was handled like in kind of a nice way, where like he didn't take the appeal of writing away from this film, which I thought could have happened, being that so much of this is just typing and reading and cutting and pasting.
Cutting and pasting. It's like,
But,
that's the old cutting and pasting, taping things on. It's like, wow.
But there was like
Times were hard.
there was a funniness to it in a way that didn't make it seem like the end of the world that he had to type through the night. I liked all of that. I liked his handling of scripts and writing.
I liked that he tried his. I'm talking about Jay Roach. I think and the writer John McNamara or McNamara. I'm not exactly sure how he pronounces it, but the handling of using the comedic elements and keep it entertaining, keep it moving, those kinds of things. I thought they handled those well. For me, those were wonderful. The ones that I just wish they had taken equal time and equal importance to giving me the really good stuff, the real conflict underneath and the drama underneath. That was the only part that was missing for me. So do you think Jay handled his workload?
I think so too. I think yes, to answer your question, because watching this film, I was so invested with the story and just who Trumbo was, everything that was going down. I didn't really think of the pacing more so because it kept my attention the whole time. I was just more interested because me personally not knowing what happened back in these days, I just wanted to know more. I was like, what's next is, coming up. Like, so he went to prison, then does he get out? How long did this take? What happens next? How does he get back into the industry? I was so invested, and never did I find a problem with just the direction, because I clearly understood who was who, and I clearly understood the unfortunate situation that everyone went through. But watching it, I always felt there was a positive side to it. It's like, I know it has to come out with a more better positive ending. So again, they were dark situations, but I knew something good was coming out of it.
This pace throughout the movie did also keep my attention. It's funny looking back at the movie and realizing how many things we covered so quickly. It didn't hit me while I was watching it.
Right.
But looking back and realizing the very, very short amount of time we spent in prison, the very short amount of time we spent with them in court, those are draining experiences that have a lot that happens. But while I was watching it, I wasn't like, why aren't we still in prison? It was just afterwards that I was like, I'm kind of surprised that I didn't get to see a little bit of those darker, harder, more stressful moments. But in the time of watching it, I wasn't wanting them, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
There's a whole segment of his life that wasn't covered in the film. And that was about when do you know about this, that he lived in Mexico?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just that. He couldn't get work, and so moved to Mexico with his family and lived there for a number of years. And before coming to Highland Park. And this was a long movie, so including that,
a little over 2 hours.
So including that was probably a good choice, but by the same token, some of this idea of actually leaving the country,
I know, that was interesting to me, and I was like, wow,
could have added some drama.
Yeah, it would have been because the fact that his own country rejected him, and then he rejects his own country, but then comes back. I mean, you could have gone a different route and used that as character motivation, all kinds of things. It would have been interesting. I don't know what happened in Mexico, so I don't know whether or not they decided it's really not worthy to go all the way down there
Might
to
not
do
be
it.
interesting.
In terms
yeah.
of story.
To not
rather
do
than-
anything,
Exactly.
really.
But I did find the omission of that very interesting because it looks like I get out of prison and I have to go to Hancock Park.
Yeah.
Which is Hancock Park. That's a horrible place to live.
Highland Park, not
Highland
Hancock
Park, Baby Park, whatever.
There's a
Still-
difference. There's a big
Yeah, I know there's a big difference, but it's still, it's
Yeah.
it's not that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I
very
didn't-
interesting. I'm sure
yeah.
that might also have to do. That's a lot to establish.
Yeah, it
you have
is.
to establish moving. You have to establish her life there. You have
Yeah.
to establish
Yeah.
why they moved back. That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole chunk of time. So I
It is.
Yeah.
understand.
But it was still fascinating. I still love the idea that irony is that okay, I got rejected by my country and I'm gonna move. Because how many people have said that's it? If so and so gets elected, I'm moving to
leaving.
Canada.
Yeah.
And this guy actually moves.
You know what? Like finding out that, now I find that interesting. But again, if nothing happened in Mexico, again, it probably wasn't needed in the film because I like how he went from one place to the next, showing the audience how he worked the system, how he
Yeah.
got back into writing.
Yeah.
I found that more interesting because that, in a way, just moved the story forward.
I loved it. I thought it was very successful. In fact, every time they showed him game the system or work around it or go through it or whatever it is, I thought that was great. I just wanted the juxtaposition underneath was the effect it was having on his family and because what he's missing or what he's losing because of that. And for me, it didn't reach.
I thought they did a really nice job of illustrating the amount of work
Yeah.
and dedication and thinking and sacrifices that he had to make in order to get back into the business. I thought all of that was outlined really well. They really showed that a person who stayed true to himself, really against anyone who told him to bend down, and I believed in the time it took. I
Yeah.
believed in how many shitty scripts he had to write without the passion. I even liked the moment where then he had to sit down to write something he actually cared about,
Yeah.
and there was just that brief glimpse at almost could he do this again?
Yeah, exactly.
Was he
That
in a
was
place
nice.
to get back?
Right.
I loved all of those moments.
Right.
I love how they created his relationship to the work, and to like the legacy he left. What we got was more of that though than family connection. But that relationship, his relationship to writing, I very much enjoyed.
Just because when he says he has to turn around a full script in 3 days, I went, oh crap. 3 days.
But that also
fastest we've been able to do this in, what,
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Like, yeah, I
2
think it was like
days, 3
18
like,
days or
what?
something.
Yes,
Yeah.
My God.
And I think that also just shows like how dedicated and how serious he
Yeah.
was about his craft and how much he wanted to get back to the level that he was at before he was,
Just one of the side notes, the counterpoints to things that he was getting paid like $80,000 for a script.
Yeah, down to 1,200.
And then down to 1,200, and that times he would write something that he was so passionate about and was so brilliant, and other times he'd hand it in and go, "It's crap, but here it's
It's done.
I've written it, it's done."
Yeah.
Because
Which is hard to do.
you just don't know
it's
what,
hard to do.
but you just don't know how it's all going to come out
Yeah.
sometimes.
And you're just a hired hand at that point. I just need to keep my family
He was
afloat
doing
and
his
stay
job.
solvent. And I liked Louis C.K. character, although he was an amalgamation, which was kind of interesting. There
Oh,
was
is that right?
Yeah, he was he was kind of a composite character, which is
Uh-huh.
because for a story about people being blacklisted and their names being erased, I thought the irony of them not using an actual
person, yeah.
was kind of rich, but that's whatever. But I like the argument that his character had with Trumbo, saying, "Look, you're not even really a communist anyway. You don't really believe in the cause." And I like the messiness and the mix and
Yes.
hypocrisy and the grayness of the fact that he was a wealthy guy, but all that stuff was wonderful.
you don't practice what you preach.
Yeah, but he did, but then he didn't, and it's kind of
It was just a variation
Yeah.
on
different
goals and different. Yes, you could say that they're both communists,
Right.
but the fact that Trumbo had this weird underlying, like he was only going to fight if he could win, stance was interesting to
Yeah.
have your protagonist say.
No, it's fabulous. It's wonderful. And you have a true believer in Louis C.K. representing that faction.
Who would normally be your protagonist?
Probably, yeah. It would but Trumbo answers that with, "Look, you got you need to have the true believer over here, but I'm a wealthy one, so I'm gonna win with the, what does he say? Something of Satan, win with the cunningness of Satan. It's like, and he pretty much did. He was very cunning in how he worked around the system and rigged it. So I like that. I thought that was a wonderful scene between the two of them, because then you got that this guy is not. You can't brush this guy with the black and white or a red brush, because he's not even a communist to some degree.
Yes.
But he was principled in his stance of, well, yeah, you don't. This is America. And you don't have the right to ask me that because it's none of your business. So which those of us who believe in the First Amendment would appreciate. Right. And then I also like the scene with Edward G. Robinson when he called him to task, saying, look, how you have to live with the fact that you took off years of this guy's life to fight for your cause because he fought it in a way that you wouldn't. Which I thought was wonderfully layered.
I thought the motivation for all of the characters was done really well. Yeah. Even Lady with the Hat. Like how they
had a hopper.
Had a hatter. There's too many like H's in the potential of that name. Had a hopper, Helen, hat. It's too much. But the layers they gave her, like I liked the little line, not the little line, but the lines they put in about her son. Right. About her son fighting, about the fact that she was still here. It gave me this feeling of, as much as I disliked her, I thought this woman actually thought she was doing the right thing and really fighting for the country, and like she had to do it because of her son and all this attachment she had there. I thought that they really gave that to her.
I thought they did. I think they did a great job of showing that fear gives a reason gives way to fear. Because when you're fearful of that you can't be reasonable, and it's just tragic in some sense. I mean, I completely agree. Thought that John Wayne thinks he's doing right and everything, but I didn't agree with it because you should squelch somebody's freedom of speech, all that kind of stuff. But they believed. They were believers.
All of the characters really did have something driving them, which was nice.
It was good to see. So they certainly have that in spades on this. That they did a fabulous job on that. Let's talk about production design, because obviously we're a period piece, and we have costuming and period and set decoration and all that kind of stuff. And I loved. I have to say, I was just in one scene. I'm going, that's a nice tweed. You don't know if it's sea tweed.
Oh my God, you're influenced by me.
I know. That's the only reason.
One of the things that I have a love-hate relationship with period pieces is that oftentimes I am distracted by what's going on around, because it's because you're looking at all the goodness. You're looking at the cut of that. Oh, those stinking hats! They were amazing. Hedda Hopper's hats, and and then the sets that they were on, and the the accessories they were using, the props that they were using, and stuff. A couple of the moments that I really appreciated were when all the families were lined up to watch their loved ones get on the plane and leave, and the signs and all that kind of stuff. I just thought that was very well done and very
and you saw it
evocative.
At the end, you saw the real picture and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. I thought the production design was really excellent.
Did you guys feel like of the era? Did you?
I thought it was beautiful because for being such a dark story, I thought the colors were so vibrant. Yeah. It definitely felt like New Orleans, because that's where they filmed it. But it just showed the audience. It showed the audience that all these screenwriters and all these people who were affected lived luxurious lives. And the fact that all this darkness is happening, that's
our
the
friend
world.
Louis C.K., because when you went up to his house, his apartment, not so nice.
Not so much for him, but
exactly.
Definitely Trumbo's house, and just the lifestyle that they lived in. It was
Edward
just
G. Robinson's
crazy.
house.
Oh wow,
and
the Monets and Van Goghs.
I thought, and the one scene when they're having the meeting with all the guys, and they tell Louis C.K.'s character to don't smoke in that room because of the paintings. I was like, yeah, that's beautiful, because they're surrounded by such luxurious things. I really loved it. I loved the color, and it was very vibrant, again showing that there was a positive ending to everything. It never really felt dark. There was always light to it.
I think my comment, if I rewatch Trumbo, is actually going to be like void, because I think the feeling I left with the production design is that I loved it and it felt very natural. Like all the characters felt very comfortable in whatever they were given. I think sometimes in period movies, people are almost dressed too immaculately.
Yeah.
Like, you can almost tell that they're wearing something they
costume
have to be
rather than an
careful
attire from the
instead
era.
of like something pulled out of their closet.
Right.
Like, they look beautiful, and it's like, wow, I wish we still dressed like that. But it's a little too perfect. I didn't get that sense when I was watching this. I really did. They did feel suited for the people they were wearing them. But I think that's the feeling I got, and I'm not sure if I rewatched this
Right,
if I
if
would
they were
still
added.
feel
Well,
the same way.
Speaking to that point, because every time I saw Louis C.K., he's just so disheveled. So I
Like,
never got
sweating out of his shirts
I
and
never
stuff,
got
yeah.
that they were immaculate because there were enough people, like even Goodman, the way he's dressed and everything like that. I'm going, there was enough people that just, I just rolled out of bed in this because that's what it looked like.
Like, I think of like things like really period. Like, I think of Mad Men, and my image of Mad Men is like, we could be in Vogue. Like, tomorrow, like, take a picture of the scene.
Right.
It's an ad.
Yeah.
In this, I just think if you took a picture of the scene, like, it would qualify as like a home photo,
Slice of life.
which I liked, but I'm still concerned that I'm going to watch it again and not
And
feel
so,
the same.
because I wasn't paying close enough attention to it all. So, all right. You know what we didn't talk about, and I've waited till now only because it's kind of representative of how people are not talking about it, and that's Diane Lane.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, she's
Right?
first of all, Diane Lane's gorgeous, and then all these years pass, and she hasn't aged a day. That, in a
But
way,
it's believable because she just doesn't age.
it is. I mean, she's already gorgeous, but like I liked how they aged Trumbo, but I didn't like how they didn't age Diane. I was like, okay, she's too. I don't know, constant of a character that it kind of bothered me a little bit. And
wanted her to see
I wanted to
age
see
just
more
like you did,
conflict
sure.
with her relationship and Trumbo. It affected their family a lot. But when it came down to that conversation, it's like, you're losing your family. I didn't feel it.
So is it? I think one of the criticisms is that she was kind of a passive character in a lot of ways. You know, she was the kind of the constant support,
Right.
silent support, not confronting her husband when the family was, or a lower
Right.
level of confrontation when the family was having issues, and that can be.
That can be viewed as passive when
and
it,
boring.
it could also be seen as incredibly strong. Like, I'm
Right.
going to be the only one that can.
Exactly.
The Rock of Gibraltar. I'm going to shepherd this, which is what Trumbo says later. Go ahead, Sarah.
I feel like the character they portrayed would be how the children would have described their mother. Like, I feel like if you had taken Trumbo's kids
Yeah.
and had them describe their mom, they would have described to you what Diane Lane portrayed or was written. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I saw. I saw like a child's description of how strong and stable and how happy their mother stayed during this traumatic time and how there she was for everyone, but also tried to balance being there for her father. I liked it. I'm not sure that is also like one person's perspective on a person. I don't think they really showed like what this person was like behind the scenes. We did get the crying scene,
Yeah,
but that
which is
still
wonderful.
seemed-
I mean, it was a great
Yeah.
That was the
moment.
moment that I teared.
been
Yeah,
holding-
well,
yeah,
you know, because you can see all this time she's been sitting
Holding
there
it together.
exactly holding it together, and that feeling of just release and relief and being able to let it go and it's
Finally.
okay now. Finally, I thought was really beautifully done.
And that she was playing it under for that moment, I would think. And we don't know how accurate that is because we don't know Mrs. Trumbo, Cleo, but we and it certainly it's been said throughout that of that era. She would have fit in.
Right.
She would
That
have
was what a woman did.
Possibly.
Yeah.
A wife.
And let's also consider this. Dalton Trumbo was widely known as being a larger-than-life kind of guy. He was very eccentric in some, and let's face it, he's writing in the bathtub and all that kind of stuff, and he's got the cigarette holder and the mustache, and so he's that kind of thing. So in comparison, anyone next to him is going to maybe mollified to some degree, just in juxtaposition. But and I like that she was that steady, stalwart thing that because those kids needed somebody to just be the hub that they could depend on and count on and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that at some point I wanted to see her go up against that larger than life guy so that he goes, oh right, sorry, stepped over. And anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that because if you look at this film overall, it's ran by a lot of strong men. which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But we had a lot of strong male characters, and I think maybe just in today's society, I wanted a strong female to kind of match Trumbo, and I didn't really get that because again, she was so passive. So I wanted maybe some scenes where she did actually face off against Trumbo, and then she was another strong female that we could all root for.
And I think they were trying to have the strong female be Elle, the daughter.
Yeah.
Which, are we going to say anything? Are we going into
I'm
that?
going into it now. That was my lead into
That was
it.
your lead in?
It's called a segue.
The way... Yes, I do think that they tried to give the audience a stronger female in the role played by Elle Fanning. In my opinion, it felt a little bit unjustified why they focused on her so much, because it made me curious about what the other children were doing. It kind of played to me as we have Elle Fanning, so we need to utilize her in scenes. And for me, this was such an important story and affected so many people's lives that I thought that the spotlight didn't really need to be shined on her quite so much.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of things that it could have been cut out for me that because it.
Well, I thought they went midpoint on that, and I thought in to their detriment, because they had at the end, you saw the end credits when Trumbo's actually saying, "What are you going to do?" They're asking him, "What are you going to do with the Oscar?" And he says, "I'll give it to my daughter." And so to me, I'm going, okay, that was the justification for why they kept that storyline. But I thought either use the storyline or remove the storyline. And I thought when I say they were in the midpoint on that, I don't think they did. I think they didn't use it enough to warrant it, so they should either have gotten rid of it or they should have actually played that out, because they start the whole thing with, well, what's a communist? Well, do you want to share? And you know, so they started this little moment between father and daughter, and I thought they were going to use that as the parallel to carry you through arc and stuff like that, and they kind of did when he gets her at the soda shop and pulls her out, and they have a little moment there, but I don't think they fully earned that storyline. They did. It just kind of like it was close, but it was like, no, you really needed to get that or get it out.
Yeah, I agree.
See, for me, it just read as teen angst, and she is a teenager, and I think maybe just in movies we see that too often from young characters, and so unfortunately, I mean, Elle Fanning, she's a great actress, but I don't think she needed to be as big as they made her. And for me, unfortunately, it just read as teen angst to someone who might be just maybe a female comparison to Trumbo. Like, this is the younger version of Trumbo. Stop her in her tracks before she gets to Trumbo level. But I just read it as teen angst, and it was just unfortunate. For me, it dragged Trumbo down a little bit, just in the storytelling.
Okay. All right. Well. Who are some other standouts that you like in terms of the acting? We talked about John Goodman. Every time he wields a bat, you gotta love it.
Amazing.
But were you surprised by David James Elliott at all?
Who played?
John Wayne.
Oh.
Just because I hadn't seen him in much else, and I just nice. I'm glad he's there. Oh, it's like I like him. I like his swagger. I like his thing. I thought he did a great job. I was surprised by it.
As the screen was going, I was going, I know you from HBO. I know you from HBO. I know you from HBO.
Yeah.
I know you from HBO. I know you from AMC. Like that was kind of what was going through my head during casting.
Okay, that was going. All right, interesting. That's what was going through your head.
Sometimes, yeah. Yep.
I don't know what to do with that information.
Well, you asked me about the characters,
okay.
and that's what happened.
All right. Well, we talked about who's the gentleman who played Kirk. What was his name?
Dean
Kirk Douglas.
O'Gorman.
Yes, thank you, Dean O'Gorman. So I want to talk about Kirk. Did anybody else read this about what he had to say about the film?
Who? Kirk Douglas?
Kirk Douglas.
No. Do tell.
Okay, so well, I'll read two things, and they're a little bit long, but they're worth it because this is according to what Kirk Douglas says. Quote: "As actors, it is easy for us to play the hero. We get to fight the bad guys and stand up for justice. In real life, the choices are not always so clear. The Hollywood blacklist, recreated powerfully on screen in Trumbo, was a time I remember well. The choices were hard. The consequences were painful and very real. During the blacklist, I had friends who went into exile when no one would hire them. Actors who committed suicide in despair. My young co-star in Detective Story 1951, Lee Grant, was unable to work for 12 years after she refused to testify against her husband before the House Un-American Activities Committee. I was threatened that using a blacklisted writer for Spartacus, my friend Dalton Trumbo, would make me would mark me as a commie lover and end my career. There are times when one has to stand up for principle. I'm so proud of my fellow actors who use their public influence to speak out against injustice. At 98 years old, I have learned one lesson from history. It very often repeats itself. I hope that Trumbo, a fine film, will remind all of us that the blacklist was a terrible time in our country, but that we must learn from it so that it will never happen again.
Very nice.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Very well said.
Nice
Yes.
job, Greg Davis.
What's that? Are you tearing up,
It
Tammy?
chokes me up a
Tearing
little
up?
bit.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I mean, talking about the things that we were a little bit critical of, that,
Yeah.
you know, the very real consequences
Yes.
that were hitting people at their most vulnerable spots, and you know, some of that connection was where you know, I wasn't finding
Yeah. It were
the
missed
love
for
for
you.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I just, since we're reading things, Trumbo in his speech, this is the thing I referenced earlier that I just wanted to say. He says that this is a speech he gave in 1970. There was bad faith and good, honesty and dishonesty, courage and cowardice, selflessness and opportunism, wisdom and stupidity, good and bad on both sides, and almost every individual involved, no matter where he stood, combined some or all of these antithetical qualities in his own person, in his own acts. So it was a very gray scenario.
Yeah.
You know, and even and again, to bring up the Elia Kazan Oscar, there were, I don't know if you guys probably don't remember, wasn't that long ago, 10 years ago. People wouldn't give him a standing ovation. They
Yeah,
very
some people-
firmly sat in
don't
their
remember
chairs.
Yeah.
Because
Still, and,
they were
50 years
not
later.
forgiving him for the fact that he did name names.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's still people on both sides that argue this fervently about that you shouldn't, that you should have, that you, all that kind of stuff. And
And it was
still,
an impossible situation
Yeah.
for everyone
especially if you're
involved.
stuck in right in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah,
So I'm going to say one
absolutely.
last
Yeah, I would
thing.
love to hear
Now,
it.
this is what Bryan Cranston said about because after Kirk Douglas, they were hoping to see the movie together and they couldn't work it out or whatever. So, but after Kirk Douglas had seen the movie, Bryan Cranston had a chance to meet with him and talk with him, and this is what Cranston says of Douglas. Douglas said that he said the movie reminded him of the times and captured the essence of not only Dalton Trumbo, but Edward G. Robinson, John Wayne, and all those guys, but also the period as well, and that sense of fear that permeated not only Hollywood, but America at the time. And then he went on to say that Douglas did have one complaint, however. That's when Michael London and I sat up and started. That's when Michael London was there with them, and they were at the
Screening?
No, at the meeting together.
Okay.
And so this is what Kirk Douglas's one problem was. I don't understand why I wasn't cast as Kirk Douglas.
Fair point.
That's great.
But he did say that the Dean did a great job.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
yeah,
That's very funny.
That sounds like Kirk Douglas.
That's great. That's great.
I really enjoyed the parallel they made with Spartacus and how this is one man standing up against.
Thank you. I'm
Tyranny.
so glad you
Yeah,
mentioned that.
exactly. And I'm going, oh, lovely parallel. Thank you for making that point. That was terrific. And you can see how what he was going through led him to write that screenplay.
Yeah.
So it's always wonderful to see how art imitates life and how life influences art. And I thought that was a great parallel.
I agree.
So it was
Yes.
standing up. So, did you want to say something more about that, Tammy, or were you going to start crying?
I might.
There are moments that really got to you, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because you just hate the innocent man wrongly
I don't
accused.
like people being wrongly accused. That makes
Yeah.
me crazy. I stand up for justice.
Yeah, and I think it's not just justice, it's just standing up for something that you actually truly believe in. I mean, you're not really hurting anyone, you're just saying what you think is right. And to target someone who is standing up for their, First Amendments and whatnot, it's something that's really sad that people, and then that again, it goes into the politics of all this. It goes into prejudice and discrimination, and just for believing in something, and that in itself, it just reflects badly. So, and I think that's also what for this story, that it hits so close to us because we are in this industry, and the fact that this has happened in the past, it can still happen in the future. History repeats itself, and it's wrong that people get targeted for believing in something, even if you don't agree.
Yes. So, well, there's a big story now about how, what's her name? Maureen O'Dowd coming about how women are in film and how much they're discriminated against, etc. And I was thinking, well, there's still injustice like crazy in Hollywood. And they make that, and I'm going, yeah, it's still happening. And it's, anyway, we won't get into that.
And then we can get into the power of media, and then we can get into how media affects.
But getting back to this movie, let's talk about how
media affects the public opinion, and we can talk about. Do you want to keep going?
Let's just talk about how the media enjoys or doesn't enjoy this film. Let's talk about how it's been reviewed and what are the critics saying. So Rotten Tomatoes is one that we cite that's getting a 72, fresh with about a 6.4 out of 10 in terms of its rating. IMDb has it roughly at a 7.2 as well. Metacritic's got it at 64 or 60 out of 100. Mm-hmm. So what are we thinking? Where do we fall in this?
I'm more in agreement with in the 70s. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it's a good movie. I think it's an important film. I think it's absolutely worth seeing. You know, I'm not raving about it, but I recommend it. I really do.
Yeah.
I got an 80.
Oh,
I wouldn't go higher than 80, but I think an 80. Yeah.
If she goes back and sees the production design cuts, she might knock that down, but hopefully not. Hopefully not, Marissa.
I would definitely put it in the 70, 75 area because it's something that we all, not just our industry, people who are part of this industry, but everyone should know because it is a worldly thing.
Mm-hmm. Cautionary tale.
Yes.
Right. I think I would as well put it in there. I would. You know, it's one of those where I was really looking forward to it because I love this part of history, and I really want. You know, I want to name names of the assholes that put people in positions. Right. You know, I wanted them to get nailed, but you know, that's my own personal bias, and they did. That's not what this movie was. It's not an indictment on anybody. They did a really even job of. Like Sarah was saying, everybody's point of view was well stated and presented, and you could see that they actually believed these convictions. So it wasn't, and there was some cynicism, but not from the people that were leading their charges, so to speak. But you know, I just get really pissed when people's livelihoods get put into question, and they don't get to provide for their families for some reason other than just speaking their mind. You know, we're supposed to have that free thought, we don't. But anyway,
you know, I also wonder if because we knew, you and I, John, knew more about the actual history of this, that we gave it a little bit of a lower rating because there was more sort of entertainment and education value for you two who had not known.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
That's a big part of why I liked so much because I did learn something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that I appreciate from the movie. But in terms of watching it as an audience, I'm going, and I'm going, okay, we have to do that because not everybody knows the context and stuff. But for that did affect me in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure that's why because I wanted to get to the meatier stuff that I already know. Let's get to the other stuff, but that's
necessary.
Not what this was. Yeah. Exactly, it is
but
necessary.
I needed it.
I know you did it. That's why I'm saying I think they did a decent job of putting that together. I'm glad they did because if nothing else, we're having this conversation, and it made you want to know more, and I think you as well about this. You know, because and again, I think it's extremely topical, even though it happened 60 years ago.
Which is kind of unfortunate.
It is unfortunate but you have to be vigilant on these things because anytime you have fear mongering and people ginning up hatred, you're going to have this stuff. And we just had Donald Trump saying that he wants,
Well,
people register, and I'm going, wait a minute. So.
Do you know that he? Can we talk about the Oscar, the Roman holiday Oscar?
Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, Trumbo's reinstatement as the author of Roman Holiday only happened 4 years ago.
From the Writers Guild.
From the Writers Guild, thank you. Yes, the Writers Guild.
The Academy acknowledged it much earlier.
Yeah, 93 or something like that.
Yeah, 2011, the Writers Guild finally.
We'll give it to him.
Like, what are you waiting so long for? Everybody knows.
And it's not like someone else was. I'm. From my knowledge, it's not like someone else was like fighting. Like, no. I want to keep it.
Exactly.
Like, no one's opposing this.
Yeah. Just like, what the hell took so long?
Exactly. It's like it's still relevant to this time. Just the story.
So, but here's the thing: the movie came out in 1953. In 1993, his Oscar was delivered to Trumbo.
Well, his wife.
Thank you, his wife, because he died in 1975 or 76.
I believe.
Okay. But so Ian McClellan Hunter was awarded the Oscar for Roman Holiday.
That was Alan Tudyk's character.
Thank you. In 1953. And he readily acknowledged, when they had that conversation in the film, I didn't write it, but that whole conversation, right?
It was a great scene.
It was a great scene, yeah.
So 1993, the Academy actually had to issue a second Oscar because Ian McClellan Hunter's son, who had received who was the owner, the possessor of the Oscar for his father,
was heired to him.
refused to hand it over. His father was dead.
Yeah.
Thomas, I think his name is Hunter. Oh God, I hope I didn't get that wrong. He's currently a Hollywood director.
Yeah, he's director.
Has directed Breaking Bad.
No, not Breaking Bad. No, Breaking Bad episodes. That's true.
Episodes,
Breaking Bad episodes. I beg your pardon.
But he refused to surrender his father's ill-gotten Oscar. Not ill-gotten exactly, but you know, I mean, because
we don't know his reasoning or anything like that. But it
we don't. I really tried to find out,
Yeah,
but
it seems
how do you
odd.
think his father would feel?
I don't know.
about that?
I mean, who knows? Maybe he's holding it up. I don't know. Maybe Dalton didn't pay the full amount that he said. I don't know. We don't know why he didn't.
I'm sure it's as complicated as all the other
maybe
elements of
there's
the
just
story.
Yeah,
but
maybe it's. I just find the irony of it and the strangeness of it that he wouldn't return the Oscar that everybody knew, and even his father tried to return to him, and according to this movie. But he didn't, and so who knows his reasoning? That would be
Devil's advocate,
Yes,
or
do.
maybe find his reason, because I also think it is bizarre. But sadly, by this point,
yeah.
Trumbo had passed away.
Right.
So I wonder if it's in part that he was like, this Oscar is belonged to my father, although like just as a possession, not as like an Oscar,
Right.
but
Or
like
as a
this is
statement.
my
Something as a
father's.
father's.
This is my father's tie. This is my father's favorite pair of shoes.
Sentimental.
I know, but it's just odd
But
because if the
it'd be
Academy
weird to be
comes
like,
to you and
you're
says
going to take this away to me to give to who?
his wife,
But by that point, wouldn't she also have been like, I mean, we knew it was his Oscar. Can't they just like make another one? Because that was like his father's belonging. Like it probably wasn't like, I don't want Trumbo to have it. It's probably just like,
that's just that we
this
don't
one
know.
says
It's
my
all
father's
speculation.
name on it.
Sentimentality.
Like this
Right.
one says my father's name on it. Come on, guys, throw up the money, make another Oscar. It was your really fault he didn't get one, and put another one out there
maybe
so I can
maybe
hold
that's
my.
the
here's
reasoning.
another argument in support of that, and that is they stripped Ian McClellan Hunter's name off didn't strip, but removed it as
sure,
the author.
they put Dalton's on.
from that point on. So this is the one remaining vestige of the contribution his father made toward getting that film.
Yeah, I mean,
made.
And his father did do
Sure.
something to. He helped that movie wouldn't have gotten to the screen without his father putting forth.
the
story.
I think we would have found another name to attach
to attach to it. I mean, what do you think about it,
But
John?
maybe, but
Well, I don't know his reasoning, so I can't speak to his motives for
Yeah.
that. It just seems like if the Academy came to me and said, "Listen, we want to right this wrong. We want to give it to his wife because he's passed on," I would have said, "Yeah, here." But that was me. I mean, I don't know what's tied to
I'm
that.
not gonna blame. So I also don't know his reasoning, and I'm just gonna hand it to like he's like. Well, maybe he was just like, oh, well, can I keep this one? Can you just make another one, Academy?
and it
I'm
could
sure
be
you
that.
have enough money to figure that
And
out.
I absolutely would.
It's-
I mean, that's fine. I would absolutely, just make another. Because I would go, the Oscar, I was like, just make a damn another, which is what they did. They just made another. But the I don't
Should
know.
it have an asterisk on it? The one, okay, we're gonna make another one. We
Yeah.
need yours though because we need to
No.
make a little
Like,
engraving
no.
on it.
Come on,
No.
it's fine.
But
I
I'm
just find it
glad
interesting.
I think
Trumbo
it's weird.
did get the rightfully earned Oscar that he should have gotten. So
In the end,
in
well,
the end,
after he died.
posthumously.
Thank you
It
for
happens
putting a
to a
button
lot
on
of
it.
artists.
Yes.
I know it
All right.
does. I know
We
it
got to get to
does.
last thoughts because we got to get out of here. Anybody have any last thoughts? Anything we didn't cover that you'd like to?
I don't have anything at the moment.
I-
Don't
She's
look
like,
at me.
my notes are gone. I'm done.
I enjoy this film. Granted,
Yeah.
the content is what you can say controversial, but it's something that everyone needs to know about or should know about, especially if you're entering this industry. This is our history. Learn from it, and this is where we come from. I found the story, the characters, and even though they're real people, I found it so interesting to learn, and I love learning, and especially more about our own industry. So this was a story that I'm going to recommend to everyone else who needs to watch this. I would definitely watch this film again because I think more people should know what happened.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that I recommend it as well. There were parts that missed for me, but the performances are so good. The story is interesting. I like you both. I think you as well. I love historical dramas. Those my favorite genre of books, and very favorite genre of mine for films. So I definitely recommend it as well.
Sure.
I also recommend it. I think that if it's a part of the film industry's history that hasn't really had a ton of light shed on it in recent years, and I think that being that we can still learn from it, it should be watched and acknowledged and thought about. And for me, it was thought-provoking and held my attention and had some really strong performances.
Yeah, I think that I've said that even if you know the story, you'll enjoy these performances because they look like they're having a ball, and sometimes it's just a blast to watch them. And some of their performances are quite surprising, I have to say. So even if you know the story already that uses a different take on it, you probably won't learn anything new if you already know about the story, but that's okay because you'll enjoy the performances alone. And if you don't know the story, this is a very good one to be introduced to the subject.
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
Great. Tell us where they can find you, Marissa.
You can follow me on Twitter at SeraphiniTV.
At Sarah_Stratton. That's mine.
Yes.
I am at Tamara Berg on Twitter. My website is tamaracentral.com.
Okay, the only place you can find me is here next time when we do another Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.